The crystalline spires of the Galactic Military Academy gleamed under the twin suns of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting countless colors across the campus grounds. Inside Lecture Hall 7, Professor Zach Still's tendrils waved with enthusiasm as he presented the final assignment of the term to his advanced xenological warfare class. Your task, the professor's translator hummed, is to analyze a species-wide military exclusion and present your findings at the annual Security Council meeting. This is your chance to impress the military's highest officials. In the third row, Vexthor's scales rippled with excitement. The young Serpentian's tactical simulations had already earned him top marks, but this was different. This was real research with real implications. His gaze wandered across the lecture hall, noting how his classmates already formed their usual study groups. The light-sensitive panels at his desk flashed, indicating a message. It was from Mira Sen, the four-eyed quaternary sitting in the front row. Her species' gift for understanding other cultures had made her an invaluable friend during their years at the academy. Meet me in the library after class. I have an idea. Her message scrolled across his screen. Vexthor sent back a quick affirmative, then noticed Kretil, the perpetually awake Chronovian, watching their exchange with interest. Kretil's species had evolved beyond the need for sleep, making him the Academy's most thorough researcher. His photographic memory had saved their study group more times than Vexthor could count. After class, the three friends gathered at their usual spot in the Great Library, surrounded by holographic data streams and ancient paper books preserved in stasis fields. Everyone else will choose the obvious cases, Mira Sen began, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she pulled up the assignment details. The Zerkath hive-mind exclusion, the energy beings of Epsilon, maybe even the silicon-based lithoids. Predictable choices, Kretil agreed, his chrome-like skin reflecting the library's soft lighting. But you have something else in mind. Mira Sen's eyes sparkled with excitement. What about humans? Vexthor's scales shifted to a surprised purple. The Earth species, but they're newcomers to the galactic stage. Their exclusion barely merits a footnote in our military history texts. Exactly. Mira Sen leaned forward, lowering her voice. Don't you think that's strange? They were banned from all galactic conflicts within 3 standard years of first contact. No other species has ever been excluded so quickly. Kretil's fingers danced across his datapad, pulling up the official records. Fascinating. The official reason is listed as incompatibility with civilized warfare protocols. That's unusually vague for a military document. My tactical training modules don't even include human combat scenarios, Vexthor added, his interest growing. I always assumed it was because their methods were too primitive to be worth studying. But what if we're missing something? Mira Sen's primary eyes focused on her friends while her secondary pair scanned the library. Think about it. Humans went from atmospheric flight to faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries. That's an unprecedented rate of technological advancement. And yet they were immediately banned from military participation. Kretil mused, his sleepless eyes showing newfound curiosity. There's a discrepancy in that logic. Vexthor felt his scales shifting to the deep blue of concentration. The annual Security Council meeting is in 6 weeks. If we're going to investigate humans, we'll need to start immediately. The records will be scattered, possibly classified. That's why we need to work together, Mira Sen said, her voice filled with determination. My cultural insight, Kretil's perfect memory, and your tactical expertise. We can solve this mystery. As they began planning their research strategy, none of them realized they were about to uncover a truth that would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare, civilization, and the species known as humans. The Academy's central archives towered above them, its crystalline walls housing millennia of military knowledge. Mira Sen pressed her palm against the bioscanner, and the massive doors slid open with a soft hum. Inside, data streams cascaded through transparent columns like digital waterfalls, each containing countless records of galactic warfare. The human section should be here, Kratil said, leading them through the labyrinth of information. His chrome-like fingers traced patterns in the air, interfacing with the Archive's navigation system. Earth made first contact only 57 years ago, so their records should be strange. What's wrong? Vex Thor asked, noticing Kratil's puzzled expression. The human military archives are surprisingly large for a species that participated in galactic warfare for only 3 years. Kratil's sleepless eyes narrowed, and most of it is sealed under Level 7 security protocols. Mira Sen's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Level 7. That's higher than the clearance needed for antimatter weapon specifications. Vex Thor's scales shifted to a curious amber as he accessed a public terminal. Let's start with what we can actually view. There must be some unsealed records. The terminal projected a holographic display, showing the basic timeline of human military involvement. First contact, technological assessment, acceptance into the Galactic Defense Force as observers, and then their first and only engagement. Look at this, Mira Sen pointed to a notation. The Krelat border incident. It's the only actual combat situation involving humans, but 90% of the file is classified. Kratil's perfect memory sparked. The Krelat Empire. They're one of the most disciplined military forces in the galaxy. Their battle formations haven't changed in 10,000 years. Which makes this even more interesting, Vex Thor said, his tactical training kicking in. The incident report shows the Krelat fleet surrendered after only 17 minutes of engagement with a single human vessel. Their research was interrupted by approaching footsteps. Professor Zack Still emerged from between the data columns, his tendrils curled tightly, a sign of distress among his species. An interesting choice for your assignment, the professor said, his translator struggling to mask the tension in his voice. Though perhaps you should consider studying the Zerkath exclusion instead. Their hive mind tactics make for a more straightforward analysis. Mira Sen's secondary eyes caught the subtle tremor in the professor's appendages. Her cultural training screamed that he was uncomfortable, possibly even afraid. Professor, she said carefully, the human exclusion seems uniquely rapid. Surely understanding why would benefit our academic knowledge. The professor's tendrils coiled even tighter. Some knowledge, students, is restricted for good reason. The humans, he paused, his translator crackling with static. Their approach to warfare was deemed incompatible with galactic stability. After the professor hurried away, Kratil spoke first. Did you notice? He used the exact same vague phrasing as the official records. And his physical responses indicated severe anxiety. Mira Sen added, my species can detect subtle emotional variations. He wasn't just uncomfortable. He was genuinely frightened. Vex Thor's scales had shifted to deep blue, his color of intense focus. Look what I found while he was talking. There's a reference to something called the improvisation protocol in the human combat logs. It's mentioned in every report, but never explained. The Krelat commander who surrendered cited it in his initial statement, Kratil noted, pulling up the fragmentary record. His exact words were, they employed the improvisation protocol. Continuation of combat became impossible. Mira Sen's primary eyes widened. What kind of military strategy could make an entire Krelat fleet surrender in 17 minutes? I don't know, Vex Thor said, his scales rippling with determination. But I think I know how we can find out. My tactical clearance might let us access some of the sealed combat footage. We just need to wait until the night cycle and the archive security protocols run their reset sequence. As they planned their next move, none of them noticed the subtle changes in the archive security algorithms, tracking their every query about the mysterious humans. The archive's night cycle cast everything in a soft blue glow as Vex Thor, Mira Sen, and Kratil made their way through the seemingly endless corridors of data streams. Their footsteps echoed softly against the crystalline floors, each sound making them more aware of their unauthorized presence. The security reset happens in exactly 3 minutes, Cortil whispered, his chrome skin reflecting the dim light. Vexthor, your tactical clearance will work for precisely 47 seconds during the transition. Vexthor's scales had shifted to a deep midnight blue, helping him blend with the shadows. I've isolated the terminal with the closest access to the sealed footage. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Miracen positioned herself near the entrance, her 4 eyes scanning different directions simultaneously. The night guards make their rounds every 15 minutes. We should be clear for the next 12. They waited in tense silence as the archive systems began their scheduled reset. The cascading data streams flickered momentarily, and Vexthor sprang into action. His clawed fingers flew across the holographic interface, entering commands with practiced precision. Come on, he muttered, watching the security protocols cycle through their reset sequence. A soft chime indicated success just as the systems began to reactivate. Got it. Transferring to secure crystal now. The footage began playing on their terminal, showing the infamous Krelat border incident from 17 years ago. The initial scenes were standard enough. A Krelat patrol fleet encountering what they believed to be unauthorized ships in their territory. Look at the human vessel, Cortil pointed, his perfect memory already cataloging every detail. It's not even a dedicated warship. The designation marks it as a converted mining vessel. The footage showed the Krelat fleet moving into their legendary celestial spear formation, a battle strategy unchanged for 10 millennia. The human ship, instead of responding with standard evasive maneuvers, did something completely unexpected. What are they doing with their mining equipment? Miracen asked, her secondary eyes widening in disbelief. They watched as the human ship reconfigured its mineral extraction beams on the fly, turning them into a makeshift defense network that somehow reflected the Krelat's initial volley back at them. The footage abruptly cut out at this point, resuming several minutes later to show the Krelat fleet in full retreat. That's impossible, Vexthor breathed, his scales flickering between colors of confusion and amazement. They turned industrial equipment into a tactical advantage in the middle of combat. No species does that. Combat protocols require dedicated military hardware. Look at this data stream, Cortil said, pulling up the ship's engineering logs. The humans were making modifications to their systems during the battle. They weren't following any established protocol. They were inventing new ones as they fought. Miracen's anthropological training kicked in. Every spacefaring species develops strict military doctrines over centuries. It's how we prevent total war, by agreeing to certain rules of engagement. But the humans, they didn't just think outside established doctrine. Vexthor finished. They didn't seem to acknowledge its existence at all. A sudden alert from Miracen's position cut their discussion short. Guards approaching, ahead of schedule. They quickly wiped their access logs, but Cortil managed to save one last file fragment. As they slipped away through the shadowy corridors, they could hear the guards' puzzled voices discovering the active terminal. Safe in Vexthor's dormitory chamber, they reviewed Cortil's saved fragment, a single quote from the human ship's captain. In accordance with the improvisation protocol, we will utilize all available resources to ensure the safety of our vessel and crew. All available resources, Miracen repeated thoughtfully. Not all available weapons or all available military assets, but all available resources. It's not just about combat. Vexthor realized, his scales settling into the green of revelation. It's about how humans view everything around them. In their minds, anything can become a tactical asset. Cortil's sleepless eyes showed rare excitement. We need to find that Krelat commander. Someone who faced humans directly might be able to explain what we're seeing. What they didn't realize was that their unauthorized access had triggered a silent alert, sending ripples through the highest levels of the Galactic Military Command. Morning light streamed through the quantum glass of the Academy's tactical training chamber. Vexthor stood before the simulation controls, his scales shimmering with frustration as another error message flashed across the screen. Every single combat simulation involving humans has been locked, he said. turning to his friends. Not just restricted, completely removed from the system. Mira-sen sat cross-legged on the chamber floor, surrounded by holographic displays showing military doctrine revisions from the past 50 years. Her four eyes darted between different timelines. "Look at this pattern," she said, gesturing to the floating data. Every species that encountered human forces subsequently revised their combat protocols. The Krelat Empire alone made 37 major doctrinal changes in the month following the border incident. Kretil, who had been cross-referencing historical records, looked up from his terminal. More interesting is what happened to their training programs. All these species suddenly started emphasizing something called adaptive response scenarios in their military academies. That's not the only pattern, Vexthor added, his scales shifting to a thoughtful purple. I've been tracking equipment requisitions. After any contact with humans, species dramatically increased their research into multipurpose technologies. The Krelat actually began converting their warships to carry maintenance and mining equipment. Their discussion was interrupted by a group of junior cadets entering the chamber for their scheduled training session. The three friends gathered their research materials and moved to their backup location, the Academy's rooftop garden, where the twin suns warmed the exotic plants from 1,000 worlds. "Something's been bothering me," Mira-sen said once they were settled. "Remember how the professor reacted when we mentioned humans? I've been studying other faculty responses. Watch this." She pulled up a recorded interview with Admiral Ixel, their advanced strategy instructor. In the video, the Admiral's crystalline form visibly clouded when asked about human military doctrine. "Notice the physiological response," Mira-sen pointed out. "It's not dismissal or disgust, it's anxiety. The same response we see in veterans who've experienced severe combat trauma." "Speaking of trauma," Kretil interjected, pulling up another file. "I found a psychological evaluation of a Krelat gunner who witnessed the border incident. Most of it's redacted, but one phrase keeps appearing. The improvisation protocol violated fundamental assumptions about warfare." Vexthor suddenly straightened, his scales flashing bright yellow. "Wait. Remember the footage we saw? The humans turned mining equipment into defensive systems. What if the improvisation protocol isn't a military doctrine at all? What if it's their ability to turn anything into a tactical asset?" A shadow fell across their gathering. They looked up to find senior instructor Zeltar, her energy form flickering with unusual intensity. "Your research project has attracted attention," she said, her harmonic voice carrying an edge of concern. "The Academy Board is concerned about your focus on human military history. We're just trying to understand their exclusion," Mira-sen replied carefully. "The official records don't explain much. Some questions," Zeltar's energy field pulsed, "are better left unasked. The humans' approach to warfare was deemed too unsettling for galactic stability." After she departed, Kretil spoke first. "Did you notice? She used the word unsettling rather than primitive or incompatible. That's the first time anyone suggested humans were excluded because they were too advanced rather than too primitive. And she didn't actually tell us to stop," Vexthor noted, his scales now a deep blue of concentration. "She just warned us that we're attracting attention." Mira-sen's primary eyes narrowed in thought. "We need to find that Krelat commander before anyone stops us. My cultural training suggests there's a pattern to where retired military officers go when they want to be forgotten." What they didn't notice was the small drone hovering high above the garden, its surveillance sensors focused on their gathering with unwavering precision. The retirement station, Twilight Haven, orbited a dying star, its faded metallic hull reflecting the deep red light. Mira-sen led her friends through dimly lit corridors, her four eyes adjusting to the perpetual sunset atmosphere that gave the station its name. "This is where military officers come to be forgotten," she whispered, her anthropological training guiding their search. "The Krelat commander, Inkstrul, has lived here for 15 years." Kretil consulted his perfect memory. After the border incident, he resigned his commission, declined all honors, and disappeared from public records. No interviews, no memoirs, nothing. They found the commander's quarters in the station's quietest section. Vexthor's scales shifted nervously as Miracen pressed the entry chime. The door slid open to reveal a Krelite male, his once mighty crystalline form now dulled with age, and they sensed something deeper than mere physical wear. "I knew someone would eventually come," Engström said, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic resonance of his species. "Though I expected military investigators, not academy students." The commander's living space was sparse, dominated by a large viewport facing the red giant star. A half-finished game of galactic chess sat on a table, playing against itself. "You've been studying the incident," Engström stated, noting their data crystals. "Tell me, what do you think you know about humans and warfare?" Vexthor stepped forward, his scales showing respect patterns. "We know they turned mining equipment into defensive systems during your encounter. We know they implemented something called the improvisation protocol." A crystalline chime, the Krelite equivalent of a bitter laugh, rang through the room. "Mining equipment? Is that what the records show?" Engström's form shifted, facets catching the red starlight. "Let me tell you what really happened." He moved to the viewport, his crystalline body reflecting the dying star's light. "We encountered their vessel in our territory. Standard procedure. We surrounded them with the celestial spear formation. 15 ships against 1. We expected them to surrender or flee. That's how it always worked." The commander's voice took on a different resonance. Instead, they opened a communication channel. Their captain said just one sentence. "In accordance with the improvisation protocol, we will now demonstrate why humans are different." Miracen's 4 eyes widened. What did they do? Everything wrong. Everything impossible. They modulated their shield harmonics to match our weapons' frequencies, turning our own energy beams into power for their systems. They'd reconfigured their communication array into a targeting scrambler. They even rerouted life support power through their external hull to create a makeshift electromagnetic pulse generator. Kretil's chrome skin reflected his confusion. But those modifications would take weeks of engineering work. "They did it in minutes," Engström interrupted. Their entire crew worked as one organism, each member suggesting and implementing modifications no one had ever conceived of. "Do you understand? They weren't following a protocol. They were inventing new laws of combat as they fought." Vexthor's scales had paled to a ghostly white. "That's why you surrendered." "We surrendered because we realized a terrible truth." The commander's voice dropped to a whisper. The humans hadn't prepared for this battle. They weren't executing some grand strategy. They were simply playing with possibilities, like children discovering new ways to use their toys. He turned to face them fully. "We surrendered not because we couldn't win, but because we realized that everything we knew about warfare was wrong. Every rule, every doctrine, every principle we built over millennia meant nothing to them. They saw our formations and thought, how interesting, while imagining a dozen ways to turn our own strengths against us." The dying star's light seemed to dim further as Engström concluded. Humans weren't banned from galactic warfare because they were primitive. They were banned because they made us realize that we were the primitive ones. Back at the academy, the trio gathered in Vexthor's private study pod, their minds still processing the commander's revelations. The room's privacy fields hummed softly, protecting them from unwanted surveillance. "The commander's story explains so much," Miracen said, her 4 eyes focused on multiple data streams simultaneously. "Look at these training simulations. Every species develops combat doctrines through centuries of refinement, perfecting each maneuver until it becomes standardized." Kretil's chrome fingers danced across the holographic interface. "But humans approach warfare like a creative exercise. Each situation is unique, each solution improvised. It completely undermines the foundation of galactic military theory." Vexthor's scales rippled with excitement as he input his tactical clearance codes. "The commander's testimony gave me an idea. Instead of searching military archives, what if we look through civilian engineering records? The holocrene filled with technical documentation from various human industries, mining operations, agricultural projects, terraforming initiatives, all seemingly unrelated to warfare. There, Mira-sen pointed with two hands while her others typed. Cross-reference these engineering logs with the border incident timeline. The humans weren't developing weapons. They were just really good at repurposing everyday technology. Kretil's perfect memory sparked. Like their first contact with the Galactic Council, their representative arrived in a vessel that was originally designed for atmospheric weather control. They had modified it for deep space travel simply because they needed a ship, and that was what they had available. The data streams shifted as Vexthor applied new search parameters. It goes deeper. Look at their educational approach. While we train specialists who master specific roles, humans cross-train their crews in multiple disciplines. Every crew member understands enough about every system to suggest improvements. That's why they can innovate so quickly during battle. Mira-sen realized, her anthropological training providing insight. It's not just about technology. It's their entire approach to problem-solving. They don't see boundaries between different fields of knowledge. The study pod security system chimed a warning. Someone was trying to override their privacy field. Acting quickly, Kretil initiated his emergency data backup protocol, while Vexthor's scales shifted to match the pod's coloring, providing natural camouflage. The door slid open to reveal Senior Instructor Zeltar, but this time she wasn't alone. A figure in the distinctive armor of the Galactic Security Council stood beside her. Your research has exceeded acceptable parameters, the Council agent stated, their universal translator giving the words a metallic edge. All data regarding human military capabilities must remain classified. But Mira-sen's secondary eyes had caught something crucial in the agent's stance. "You're not here to stop us," she said carefully. "You're here to test us." The agent's armor shifted, revealing more organic features underneath. Perceptive. Your investigation has been monitored from the beginning. Few students have ever pieced together the truth about humans. The ban isn't about protecting the galaxy from humans, Vexthor said, his scales showing the blue of revelation. It's about protecting our military traditions from being completely upended by human creativity. Consider the implications, Kretil added, accessing his stored memories of their research. If humans joined galactic warfare, every species would be forced to abandon millennia of military doctrine. The entire structure of interstellar conflict would change. The Council agent nodded slowly. Chaos would ensue. Every battle would become an exercise in unprecedented tactics. No strategy would remain reliable once humans started improvising counters to it. But that's not the real reason for their exclusion, is it? Mira-sen pressed, all four eyes fixed on the agent. There's something even more significant that you're still hiding. The agent's armor rippled with what might have been appreciation. Continue your research, but remember, some revelations can never be unsealed. The final truth about humans must remain in shadow for now. As the agent departed, the three friends shared knowing looks. They were closer to the truth, but the greatest mystery still lay ahead. The Academy's secure quantum computing lab hummed with energy as Kretil connected their collected data crystals to the main processor. The room's advanced systems could analyze patterns that other computers might miss, and after the Council agent's visit, they knew they were close to something unprecedented. Cross-referencing all known human military encounters, Kretil announced, his chrome fingers moving across multiple interfaces. Not just the documented battles, but every training exercise, every joint operation, even their peaceful engineering projects. Vexthor's scales shifted through analytical patterns as he studied the emerging data web. Look at this. In every scenario, humans displayed completely different tactical approaches. There's no standardization, no repeated strategies. That's impossible, Mira-sen said, all four eyes widening as she processed the information. Every species develops patterns. It's fundamental to military development. You find what works and refine it. The quantum computer's holographic display filled the room with streams of interconnected data points, each representing a human innovation or tactical decision. Instead of forming clear patterns, the connections sprawled outward like a growing crystal, each branch spawning new possibilities. "It's beautiful," Kretil whispered, his perfect memory capturing every detail. They don't just adapt to situations, they actively seek new ways to approach each challenge. Even when a solution works, they immediately start thinking of alternatives. Vexthor pulled up footage from various human operations, watched their engineering teams. When they modify equipment, they're not following any manual or procedure. They're having discussions, sharing ideas, building on each other's suggestions. "That's it," Mira Sen exclaimed, her anthropological training clicking with the new data. The improvisation protocol isn't a military doctrine at all. It's their natural problem-solving process. They turned everything into a collaborative, creative exercise. The quantum computer suddenly pinged, having detected a hidden pattern. The holographic display shifted, showing a comparison between standard galactic military development and human innovation rates. "This is incredible," Kretil said, analyzing the data. "While we spend centuries perfecting specific strategies, humans spend that time developing their creative thinking capabilities. They don't see combat as a chess game with fixed rules. They see it as an art form with endless possibilities." Vexthor's scales flashed with excitement. Look at their training programs. They don't just teach soldiers how to fight. They teach them how to think differently about every situation. Their exercises aren't about mastering specific tactics. They're about learning to see new possibilities in everything around them. "The implications are staggering," Mira Sen added, her secondary eyes tracking multiple data streams. "A species that approaches every conflict as a unique creative challenge, that sees every tool as infinitely adaptable, that treats military doctrine as a suggestion rather than a rule. They would be impossible to predict," Vexthor finished, his scales showing the deep blue of understanding. "No combat computer could calculate their possible actions because they're always inventing new options. No tactical database could prepare for their strategies because they create new ones on the fly." Kretil's sleepless eyes showed rare amazement. The galaxy banned humans not because they were dangerous in the traditional sense, but because they represent a fundamental shift in how warfare could be conducted. They don't just think outside the box, they reimagine what a box could be, then turn it into something entirely new. The quantum computer's final analysis appeared in the center of the room. Human combat efficiency derives from unrestricted creative problem-solving rather than traditional military doctrine. Probability of predictable tactical responses, 0.1%. "Now we understand why the Council agent was testing us," Mira Sen said softly. "The galaxy isn't ready for this knowledge. If every species started approaching warfare like humans do, everything would change." Vexthor finished, his scales settling into a thoughtful pattern. "But there's still something we're missing." The agent hinted at an even deeper truth. The quantum computer pinged again, indicating it had found something else hidden deep in their collected data, something that would change their understanding forever. The Academy's great presentation hall fell silent as Vexthor, Mira Sen, and Kretil stood before the assembled Galactic Security Council. Their research had earned them this unprecedented opportunity to present their findings to the highest military authorities in the galaxy. "Honored council members," Mira Sen began, her four eyes meeting the gazes of various species representatives. "Our investigation into the human military exclusion has revealed something extraordinary. The truth isn't about their weapons, their tactics, or even their technology." Kretil stepped forward, activating their presentation matrix. The hall filled with holographic displays showing their collected data. "Humans approach problem-solving differently than any known species. While we perfect established methods, they continuously create new ones. But that's not what makes them unique," Vexthor added, his scales shimmering with scholarly confidence. "Our quantum analysis revealed something far more significant. Humans don't just improvise. They inspire improvisation in others. The hall erupted in murmurs as their final evidence appeared. Training logs from joint exercises showed non-human crews beginning to suggest modifications to their own equipment after working with humans. Engineering teams from rigid traditional species started proposing unprecedented solutions to problems after observing human methods. The Krelat commander told us humans made them feel primitive, Narration continued. But he was wrong. Humans don't make other species feel primitive. They awaken our own capacity for innovation. They remind us of possibilities we've forgotten. Kretil's perfect memory provided the exact statistics. After any significant contact with human problem-solving methods, other species show an average 700% increase in tactical creativity. Their influence exponentially multiplies our own potential for advancement. Vexthor brought up the final piece of evidence, the quantum computer's deepest analysis. This is why humans were really banned from galactic warfare, not because they were dangerous, but because they're transformative. Their presence doesn't just change battles, it changes everyone who encounters them. The head of the Security Council, a being of pure energy, floated forward. You understand, then, why this knowledge must be carefully managed. Imagine if every species suddenly began approaching warfare with unlimited creative potential. The carefully maintained balance of power would become something better. Narration interrupted, her voice carrying new strength. Our research shows that human-inspired innovation doesn't lead to chaos. It leads to evolution. Every species that adopts their creative approach doesn't become more destructive. They become more resourceful. The quantum projections shifted to show potential future scenarios. Species working together to find new solutions, combining their unique perspectives with human-style innovation. Military doctrine evolving from rigid rules into flexible frameworks that encouraged creative problem-solving. The improvisation protocol isn't a human military secret, Kretil explained. It's their gift to the galaxy. They show us that every problem has multiple solutions, that every tool has unlimited potential, and that every individual can contribute to innovation. Vexthor's scales shifted to display the formal patterns of a declaration. We recommend that the human military exclusion be reconsidered, not because they deserve to participate in warfare, but because we deserve to learn from them. Their approach to problem-solving could transform galactic civilization itself. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, remarkably, the energy being at its head began to pulse with colors of agreement. Your research has proven what some of us have long suspected. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to embrace new possibilities. As the council members began discussing the implications of their findings, the three friends shared knowing looks. They had discovered something far more valuable than a military secret. They had found hope for a future where creativity and collaboration could transform even the most rigid traditions. In the end, the true power of humanity wasn't their ability to turn mining tools into weapons or communication arrays into tactical systems. It was their ability to show every species in the galaxy that innovation knows no bounds, that adaptation is always possible, and that together, they could all reach heights none had imagined before.